Hey, friend. So good to see you. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having an amazing start to the week. I'm coming in from Austin, Texas. I would love to know where you are coming in from. If you're new around these parts, the chat is kind of the place to be. It's where a lot of the magic happens. If you're listening on one of your favorite podcast channels at a later date, that's okay. We love you too. But it is kind of fun when you can join us live if you have the time, because you will be part of this conversation too. This is not like your normal get together where I wax poetic for 45 minutes to an hour and get to ask all of my questions. No, no, no. You also get to ask questions, which makes us a little bit unique in that way because you also have a seat at the table. And when I was pulling up all these seats at the table for Lena and Shelby and Jim and Alejandro and Noni and Jeff and Samantha, I was like, you know what? There's always room for more chairs, even if we have to have a very, very long table. So just know if you want to bring a friend, if you want to bring them on with you, send them the link, getcoffeewithkim.com, and they can join the party too. There's always enough chairs. When I was thinking, holy moly, it's February, maybe you were also having that thought when it hit this week. Wow, January went by in a second. When I was thinking about, okay, here we are in February. What is February going to look like? How are we all adjusting after the kind of post New Year's madness and rush of goals and resolutions and things that you're going to do? As the dust starts to settle in February, I thought to myself, and maybe you have had this thought as well, I thought to myself, wow, I feel like the first few weeks of the year, it's a lot of me language. It's a lot of my goals, my, things that I'm striving towards for the year, what I'm changing about my routine and myself. And I thought to myself, obviously, that's great. We're doing a lot of internal work and changing. But that also means that everybody else is doing a lot of internal work and changing, which means that we might be going back to environments, or we might be going back to relationships, or we might be going back to work in new environments. There has been change not only with ourselves, but with other people as well. So how are we navigating that change? How are we navigating potential changes in the workplace? How are we navigating potential changes at home, potential changes with friends and family? Because as we know, we are one whole person. We are not like a silo of people. We bring our whole selves to work, whether we like it or not. And so navigating change, whether it's in business, whether it's in your personal life, it bleeds through and it is very, very real. So as I was kind of pondering this thought of how do we get out of ourselves and maybe start dealing with the change that's happening, a reorganization at work, or maybe you've decided that you want to leave your job and you want to start doing consulting work or become an entrepreneur. How are we dealing internally with that feeling of change and navigating that feeling of change? And so I knew the perfect person to talk to us about that. And that is none other than Erin Shrimpton. And you might recognize her from LinkedIn Learning. She has a bunch of really outstanding courses that are all about kind of keeping an experimental mindset, about finding fulfillment in your work, and exactly what I'm talking about navigating change and finding stability in times of disruption or when things around you are just out of your control. So wherever you are in the world, I hope that you can help me and Kelly and Giacomo by raising your cups and welcoming Erin to our coffee chat. Hey, Erin.
Hello. Hi, so great to see you.
So great to see you, and so thankful that you're able to join us and impart some of your wisdom on us, because as I said, I just think that the first part of the year is such a pivotal time to be talking about change and experimenting, because this is the time to do it. Do you find that people are making a lot of changes in the first part of the year?
Absolutely. Trying to, and in some cases, not always succeeding. I mean, myself included. We're all human. Even when we know all of this stuff inside out, sometimes change can be super hard, whether that's trying to change yourself or trying to get through change that somebody else has instigated. those things are hard, because ultimately the brain really just quite likes certainty and predictability. So it's always going to be pushing back up against you when you're trying to change things. But yeah, I think people do take this opportunity. And also, it's funny, I mean, in this part of the world, I'm in Dublin, in Ireland. I don't know if we have anyone else from this side of the pond here, but the weather's pretty grim. It's kind of dark. So it's, in a way, in some ways, that makes it a harder time to start new habits. But in other ways, it's kind of like it's quite a nice time to hunker down and focus in on you for a few weeks. So I think that's what people.
1,000%. And I also feel like, at least for me, part of exactly what you said, kind of dealing with change and knowing that about yourself, is just identifying. Like, my husband loves change, loves flying by the seat of his pants. Like, his personality type is like, no problem. I am a little bit more like Kelly in that I don't love change. And I know that about myself. Like, I recognize, like, step one is recognizing that you are not that type of person. So if you're like Kelly and I, maybe you recognize, like, I'm like maybe not the best at change. What are some like tips or tactics or baby steps that you've helped clients and companies that you've worked with kind of help people like us that just we already know we're bad at it, but how do we get less bad at it?
Yes. So, and I think the first thing I might say is be kinder to yourself, because everybody is programmed. I mean, I take your husband as an example. There are people who kind of love novelty, who bring it on, but most of us are programmed. So the brain, like I was just saying, I like to call it like the little prediction device between your ears, because it's constantly trying to predict what's going to happen next. And when we feel that we can't predict, like, when something's changing, particularly when something's changing in our home life or at work. So those are the two sort of beacons of stability in our lives, home and work. We like to know exactly what's going on there. When things are changing there, we feel it as discomfort. It's like an instinctive physiological sensation designed to restore predictability. And we can't always do that, of course. So basically the short answer is to just get comfortable with being more flexible. But of course, we know that that's not necessarily always possible. So one of the things that I actually noticed over the years in working with clients, so big clients going through culture change, and I'd be working with people, and you'd always hear things like, oh, the people are really resistant to change. And when I'd speak to people, actually, ultimately, it's not really the people are resistant to change. They can usually see, like probably in your case or in Kelly's, you can probably usually see, I can see like the benefit of this change. It's just that it's causing me discomfort. And so I would try to get under the hood of kind of why is that discomfort there? And it's usually because of that lack of predictability. And also because you find it hard to see yourself in that future. And you find it hard to know, am I going to be capable there? Am I going to be, am I going to be confident in that future that I can't see, that I can't build a picture of? So, and I actually came up with this, I had a bit of a revelation basically through the pandemic, because I started playing Super Mario a lot with my little boy at the time. And, we were all looking for something to do, weren't we, to distract ourselves. And I kind of started realizing during that time that the Super Mario world was actually pretty kind of reminiscent of what was going on in our own world. Now, I'm talking, by the way, about the circa 1993 version here, where it's like there's, fireballs coming at you. You have to jump over deadly pits of lava. There's all sorts of things. You never know what's coming at you next. And that's sort of what it felt during the pandemic, didn't it? It was like, what is actually going to happen next? We just don't know. But then I realized that during the game, you can get yourself a power up. And a power up is basically just that little boost of capability that'll help you fly past that pit of lava or swim past a killer squid. And I realized that's what I needed in my real life as well. I was like, I just need a power up every day. I need something today that is going to help me feel more capable, more motivated, and more confident. And so I kind of delved into the research in psychology and realized that actually what that is what we would call in psychology self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is just that feeling that it's aligned with confidence, kind of a first cousin of confidence, but it's that feeling that we have capability to get through whatever lies ahead. So you can see that it's really important during times of instability and uncertainty, because really it's about that confidence that you can get through whatever it is, and so the ways to build self-efficacy, there's lots of proven ways to build. The one that I kind of probably rely on most is just simply to experience success. So you can do this in a big grand gesture kind of a way by doing something awesome, and reminding yourself of a big achievement that you've reached. But I also really like to do it in a really day-to-day way, because remember, something like this is like a muscle that you have to constantly work on. So when I get up in the morning and you're feeling those niggles of, I don't want to make this change. I don't want to stick with this habit. I don't like what's going on in my work. I don't like having to adapt to something new. Something really small that reminds your brain that you do have the capability to get through whatever is coming at you. So, some people like, really smashing their step count. Some people like just reorganizing the condiments in their fridge to like open it up and go, yes, look at me, how capable I am. And I really mean, like, it can be at that just very basic level. And that just helps you every single day believe I've got this. And I've got the capability to get through whatever lies ahead. And then of course you can build the bigger kind of power ups, by investing in a skill. Like one at the moment that I'm seeing a lot of people fretting a little bit about is AI and generative AI. And they're thinking, how is this going to impact my job? How am I going to have to change to? And really the best way to overcome that is, well, build your skill. Just every day, just do a little bit of learning about that skill and invest in it. So there's lots of different ways you can experience success and give yourself a power up. I'm here for all ideas. So I'd love to know, actually, people tuned in. Kim, what's your power up?
Yeah.
What's everyone's power up today?
I think a lot of time my power up comes from, well, it's a two-parter. I think it comes a little bit from control. I think sometimes change makes me feel like I'm not in control. And then I don't like that because I am a little bit of a control freak. I'm a little type A. I like my color-coded folders. To your point, I like the predictability of it. Yeah. So it's that loss of control that sort of like really kind of gets at me. So that's part one. So part two, kind of the way that I power up and kind of get back into that is I do an exercise where I think to myself, even if it's really small, what is something that I can control? Even if that's really small. So I usually do two things, either at night or in the morning, that make me feel like, okay, I'm a little bit more in control, even if it feels like I'm in a tornado of change and craziness and stuff going on. And number one, that is, I will sometimes rewrite my to-do list. I still use pen and paper, but even just rewriting it, which sounds so silly, is like, feels like, okay, I have a little bit of a grasp on something. Yeah. And the second thing that I do is I will brain dump. I find a lot of times when I am very hesitant towards new things, it's actually because my cup runneth over. Like I already have too many things going on in my mind. So sometimes when people hit me with like and wouldn't this be great? And wouldn't this addition be awesome? And wouldn't it be great if we changed that? In my head, I'm thinking, okay, sure, you want to change that from Tuesday to Thursday, but on Thursday, I already have 3 things going on. So it's not necessarily the change, it's like the after effects. So sometimes I will just brain dump on a piece of paper. Again, I find that a piece of paper works better than the computer. And that also helps, because sometimes just getting it out of my head, or getting like if they change it from Tuesday to Thursday, then I will have to reschedule 2 meetings. Like even just getting that out is really helpful for me, like beyond.
100%. Absolutely, 100%. And yeah, I mean, and actually to pick up on your point about control, it is one of the fundamental things that we all need through change. And that, I talk quite a lot about autonomy, which is it's a related concept to control. The reason I like autonomy is because sometimes when we think about control, we get disappointed because we end up not actually being able to control everything that we want to control, right? Whereas autonomy is more that idea that we have agency over an influence over something that's important to us. So in the workplace, I often try and work with teams and say to them, look, there's a lot of stuff out there, the circle of control, a lot of stuff out there that you can't control. But within the little circle of your team, there are lots of things that you do have the power to change. And if you think about your day-to-day experience at work, I think that's what happens sometimes in workplaces. There's big changes coming at you and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to impact my life so much. But actually, when you think about your day-to-day experience at work, so much of that is down to the interactions with your team members, how you do your to-do list, how you make sure that you're organizing your meetings, how you make sure that you're connecting with people. And then you realize, oh, well, actually, a lot of that is still in my control, or I still have autonomy to and influence to change this. So I try and refocus people, because when when the brain loses focus, that's when the threat mode starts to come in. So I try and refocus people on, okay, what is it that is still in your power to change? Because ultimately when things are changing around you, the hard, cold reality is we're going to have to change too. There's no way of escaping when you're amidst change. There's no way of escaping the fact that you also have to change. So if you're going to have to change, you might as well make those changes in the direction that's going to work for you, and make those changes, change your experience of work for the better, for example, or, make those changes to do with your health and well-being that's going to make you feel powered up to get through whatever lies ahead. So yeah, it's all about like refocusing. And I think exactly what you've just described, rewriting your to-do list, brain dumping and working out, okay, and getting those thoughts out of your head down onto paper. Brilliant examples of ways to kind of exert your power on that situation. So yeah.
I loved your example of, when you're really dealing with a team and you're saying, we can't control all of these outside things that might be happening. We're really just kind of looking at this inner circle of 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, whatever it is on your team or your department. I'm curious, when you've worked with these teams or worked with companies, what are some best practices or things that you've found that are really successful for people who are trying to kind of center themselves or really provide themselves a little bit of stability amidst all the change? Have you found that there's like a common thing that works a lot for most people or most teams?
Yes. So actually recently, I have been working with teams. So there's I look at this in sort of 3 big levels, right? So there's the thing that you can do with your team, and you can do your whole overhaul of your ways of working. And I have a course on LinkedIn Learning called Leading Culture Change in Your Team, which gives a full-on methodology to do that, right? So you can literally, and this really helps people because it really reminds them, I have the power to change most of my day-to-day experience at work, and I can contribute to it. It helps them experience that success. It helps them focus in on making work better for themselves. It helps them collaborate and learn with their colleagues. But having said that, it's a pretty big undertaking, right? So in the recent years, I've kind of drilled it down a little bit and worked with people and gone, okay, look, the changes in our working world have been pretty enormous. But what we've tried to do is adapt back to the world of work without really changing much about ourselves. Can we take a look at changing our routine, simply the routine that we use as a team? So like that, the way we hold our meetings, the little rituals that we have, because when we were all present in a workplace together, there were all these little interactions that kind of punctuated the routine of our weeks that we've lost. And those are the things that give people stability. It's funny, like when you have a baby, everybody tells you about giving the baby routine. And I kind of go, yeah, also, we all need routine.
Yeah.
Not just babies. We all need routine to know what's about to happen next. It really keeps our brain calm. It keeps us knowing, it allows us to focus better as well at our work. So really just working with the team and working out, okay, what are the different things that we want to punctuate our weeks with? And even if you don't have time to kind of re-establish a whole routine, focusing only on two things: how you get into the flow of your work. So making sure that you have got time boxed off that you are getting really deep into that focused state of flow in your work. And also then separately to that, making sure that you're getting the opposite of that, which is connection and collaboration. Because both of those things have been proven to bring your mind back down into a calmer state. So having flow is a renowned kind of concept in psychology, and one that I am really obsessed with because it's a little bit elusive sometimes, as I'm sure you'll know, and everybody knows how much we love being able to get into the focused state of flow in our work, but sometimes it feels impossible. But we also know that when we're in it, actually, we often forget about all of those worries and the overwhelm that's going on in our mind, because we're so in that such lovely, focused, calm state of only looking at and thinking about what it is, in front of us, and getting into that lovely creative state of flow. So that is an actual buffer to those kind of worrisome thoughts and the overwhelm. But so is human connection. So making sure that, even like social connection is just totally magic. And I think it's become so much clearer to us since the pandemic, since we were all forced to not be socially connected with people. We realized just what it was doing for us. And it is, it's been studied at a neurobiological level that actually interactions, and it doesn't have to be, of course, we all love, big full-on social interactions and parties and all of that, but it can just be those simple, quick, brief, as Barbara Friedrichsen is a professor of social psychology. She calls it micro moments of connectivity. So making sure that you are just having, whether it's with your colleagues, with the barista down in the coffee shop, with the UPS driver who comes with your packages to the door if you're working from home, you're just having those just little quick interactions with people. That actually calms your physiology, it calms your nervous system. So again, those are just, really just little things that we can tap into that, again, are in our control, that we have autonomy to influence.
I love this idea of, to your point, like getting into that flow state, being in that flow state as much as humanly possible. And I'm curious for you, what are the rituals, or how do you, Erin, kind of dig into your own flow state? And because I think it's always interesting to me, obviously this is the work that you do, day in and day out. So you're like knees deep in it. So always curious, like, oh, maybe for somebody like me or Giacomo or Stanley or Jeff, it might be a little harder. Like for you, because you sit in this world all the time, is it quite easy for you to kind of get into that flow state? Or what are some things that you do to kind of trigger yourself to get into that flow state?
I find it really interesting because even though I live and breathe this, there are still days when I just find it, my brain is just too active. It just will not allow for a really good flow state. But yes, there are certainly things that I do that I know from the research. Things like, literally blocking off your diary to make sure that there is nothing else, turning off all your notifications on your phone, turning off sometimes even your laptop, and just going and depending on what the nature of the work that you're trying to do, going away with just a pen and paper and trying to get into it. I find also sometimes tuning into what kind of environments are conducive to different types of work. So sometimes I realized a little while ago, I sometimes bring the laptop with me to the hairdresser. And I realized a little while ago, I actually get great work done at the hairdresser. And I would never have thought that, because of course there's hair dryers going, there's people coming and going. But for some reason, that background noise just allows me to kind of have that enough stimulation going on in the background that allows me to get then focused. Whereas sometimes if I'm at home, it's actually just a bit boring at home. So my brain is kind of looking for something else to do, or obviously putting the laundry on, all of that type of thing. So sometimes we do need to kind of get ourselves out of our regular routine to find that flow state. Then also things like making sure when you're setting up a task that you want to do, making sure that you're setting the task up in a way that is clear for you. So this is brilliant. If you've got a really good line manager, work with them on this, because what you want is real clarity about what you're trying to achieve, what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. But then you also want frequent feedback. So in between the flow experiences, when you're in and out of them, you want to kind of get your bit of flowy work done, then come out of them and then have some feedback on what you've done. And then you can get back in again, because the feedback actually just kind of stimulates another kind of round of productivity for you. So it's important to be clear on the end goal, but also to make sure that it's broken into kind of micro tasks as well. So in my case, it depends. If I'm working with a client, then that's why I always kind of try and do that with the client. I'll say to them, I'd like to work a bit iteratively with you on this, because I'd like to kind of get some feedback, at different stages. And I find that really helps, first of all, for me to get into the flow state, but also for me to produce better work. So, so those are the things. And then some people have rituals like, having to wear certain slippers, or having to have your coffee at a certain time. And, whatever gives the brain the signal, it's time to work now, then do it. And just, it's all about, I think, over a number of weeks, if you're really keen on this idea, over a number of weeks, just noticing, okay, so I really got deep into the flow there. What was I up to just beforehand? What were the little things that I did that allowed me to get into that state?
I think that's such a great point, because I think sometimes in our busy world, when we're zooming from one thing to the next and boom, 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 and you're right. When we do get into the flow state, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I definitely don't always take the time to really say, well, what time of day was it? Had I eaten beforehand? Where was I working? What day of the week was it? For a while, and it worked, and I still do it to this day. Like, I won't do any meetings on Monday. I call it no meeting Monday. I will not do calls on a Monday. I will not go meet you for coffee on a Monday. I have found that for me, getting into a flow state on a Monday really sets me up for a successful week. And that means I can't be switch tasking. I can't be jumping from, oh, I have a call, now I'm off a call, now I'm on another call. I save those for later in the week. But I think you're right. Taking the time to notice when you do get in a flow state, or when you are open to new ideas, as an example, what are the factors that maybe helped get you to that state, or allowed you to receive those ideas more freely?
And remember, you can get into the flow state in any aspect of your life. It doesn't have to be in work. So I think that's an important thing for people to remember as well. Again, if you're going through a period of instability, think to yourself, okay, well, I need to focus on work, but I also need to disconnect from work too, because if I get too over-focused on work, that can lead to burnout, of course. So, classic ways that people like to get into the flow are through a brilliant conversation. Like, Kim, we're probably in flow right now. Or, on a nice walk, either by yourself or with a friend, getting out into nature. These are the times that people tend to have these flow experiences. So also notice what other tasks or what other activities that you do. That, I suppose, the thing to look out for is you didn't notice the passage of time, that, you came out of it and you went, oh, I actually have not had my coffee for 2 hours, and, I hadn't even noticed it. Those are the times that you've been in flow, and just take note of them.
I think that that's huge. Exactly what you said. Like, when did you last lose track of time, and where was that, and why was that, and who was that with, and what does that look like? I think that is like, if you can figure that out for yourself, it's magical. And I know Jim was saying, like, I wish I had a no meeting Monday. And I know that sometimes no meeting Monday is not realistic for everybody, but find something that is within your control, or that is, even if it's just you grouping calls, if you know that Tuesday afternoon is good, like, just when you're going to give people availability to get in touch with you, only give them Tuesdays, and only give them the Tuesday afternoon. So even if it is something slightly that you can control, whether it's scheduling a call or scheduling a meeting, control what you can to your own ability, but figure out what works best for you. I think that's definitely huge.
And I'm banging this drum with every, slowly but surely with every team leader that I'm talking to at the moment. I'm going, make sure you're getting your team set up in a situation. So again, back to this, reestablishing your routine point. If people are working in a dispersed way, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to batch your meetings like you just described, Kim, and give people the opportunity to have a few spare hours in the week. And if you've got a situation where you're literally going back to meetings all day long every day, you're going to have to ask questions to your manager about, well, why do I need to be in meetings all day long? Surely that is just, and when we think about, how to find fulfillment in our day-to-day life, yes, meetings are a big part of work. And in many cases, it's a great way to get connection with people and, collaborate and all that. That's great. But we also need to be actually able to achieve and do the work as well. So it shouldn't be a hard sell.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a hard sell. Or sometimes I find that I'm honest with people. So I'll give an example. It happened to me last week. Somebody was asking, they really wanted to do a call with me, and they wanted to do it, ASAP. And they really wanted to know if I was available in the afternoon on either Thursday or Friday. And I was honest with them. I said, we can do the meeting, but I want to be honest and let you know that after 3:30 on most days, my mind is pretty mushy. Like I'm more of a morning person. So we can get on a 4 o'clock call or a 5 o'clock call, but just know that if you're wanting to have a really creative meeting, 5 p.m. on a Friday, Kim, not performing her best at 5 p.m. on a Friday. I'm performing my best at happy hour, A++. Creative meeting, D-. So I was really honest. Yeah, I was honest. I said, we can do it. I'm happy to do it, but I just want to set the expectations for you. And I have to say, because their earlier emails were like, we got to do it this week. We got to do it. This is the only time I'm available. I need you to be available. And once I said, happy to be available, but wanted to caveat this with my brain will be mush and just so we're all on the same page. Then all of a sudden they had availability Tuesday morning the following week. So I've also found that and by the way, this person works at a corporate job. So it wasn't even it was like a fellow entrepreneur. I have found sometimes that radical transparency or radical candor has also worked really well because people know, oh, wait a minute, I don't want the D- version of Kim. I want the A+. Or they could say to themselves, you know what? This is just an initial meeting. I don't need to have her full brain power. And I'm okay with a D- version of her. That's cool. Let's do the meeting. So I also find that that's very helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so, and I think people, again, another thing, if we're going to try and find some silver lining on the experience that we had during the pandemic, I think that the couple of things, we've found better language to be able to talk about our well-being, but we've also found better language to communicate our boundaries because we've had to because, no longer is it well, look, I'm not in the office then. It's oh, well, actually we're always on. So how do I explain that actually 5 o'clock on Friday is not going to work for me? You have to find a way of saying that. And, the way you've just described how you said it is absolutely perfect. And it's kind of, it's very empowering, isn't it? To find ways to communicate that.
For me, it was huge, but I love this point, from Matthew, for anybody out there that is, they understand that work is work and they have to do it, but there's a lot of monotony in, okay, it's another day and it's another Tuesday and it's another invoice or it's another expense report. How can they kind of infuse that power up or infuse a little bit of spark among the monotony without breaking focus or without totally losing track of what it is that they're doing.
Oh, yes. I mean, this is something I think as well that people who now are working from home quite a lot are finding in particular. I think, because there is definitely monotony. When we'd go into an office, there'd be, people to see on the commute and different things happening. Whereas when you're working at home a lot, there are many, many benefits to doing that, or working remotely, there are many benefits to doing that. We have to find those kind of little novel moments for ourselves. And I think, so David Eagleman, who is a professor of neuroscience, talks about this quite a lot. He talks about how, and again, this is something that I consider, as you say, to be a power up, because he talks about the real importance of finding novelty for our brain. It teaches the brain to be more flexible. That's what we want, because obviously, like I said at the beginning, the brain just wants predictability. And if we let the brain have what it wants, we would just continue to do the same thing day in, day out. And we know that will get monotonous, right? So, but I like what he says, because he says, really, this doesn't have to be, big ways of finding new ways of doing things. It can be just simply taking a slightly different route when you're on your morning walk, or going to a different coffee shop and trying out a different coffee. It doesn't have to be really big things, and those are things that will, and if I suppose if you find yourself in the flow of your work, and you might realize that at certain times of day, your concentration dips or whatever, factor in maybe just that little break from your routine to go out for your walk, go outside for a few minutes, get into nature, do something like that. That's not going to break your concentration completely, but will, just give you that bit of kind of invigoration in your day. I mean, we all know, and we all do it, looking at our phones, getting onto Instagram. It's probably the worst thing. It's going to totally break your focus, isn't it? And I am guilty. That's why I have to actively turn off, the notifications on my phone. But I will also say, in defense of those kinds of apps, I work by myself a lot, and sometimes I do actively go into my WhatsApp and, to try, because for that social connection, I know I have a number of friends and colleagues who also work by themselves. So sometimes we might send each other little memes of silly things, just to kind of punctuate the day with a little bit, little boost of something funny, or, something to think about. And I think if you find a way of being able to do that, so knowing, okay, well, I'll open my WhatsApp at this time, and, that's going to be okay. As long as you're just not mindlessly doing it, then I think, it's absolutely fine. And I do still mindlessly do it as well, but, we're all human.
No, 1,000%. And something that I will add that I've tried to start doing is, if I am trying to take kind of a digital break, but what I have found with Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or any of these things is that the scroll can be constant. What I've started doing is I subscribe to probably, 8, 9, 10 different newsletters that I really enjoy reading from a week-to-week basis. What I will do is, if I do want to take a little mental break, instead of getting on the social media apps where the scroll kind of lasts forever, I will tell myself, okay, Kim, you can read one newsletter, because the newsletter has a beginning and an end. Maybe it takes 5 minutes, maybe it takes 8 minutes, maybe it takes 10 minutes, whatever. But the thing about Instagram for me is that it never stops. There's always one more post. So what I have found with my little mental break of reading newsletters is there is a definitive end. The newsletter is done, and you cannot, I tell myself, okay, you only get to read one, or you only get to read two, pick your two favorite that are sitting in your news folder in your Gmail app. So that is something that I would offer out to anyone else who wants to take a digital break, but maybe knows, for me, I know that I will be a victim to the doom scroll of all of a sudden I said I was going to take a 5-minute break, and now it's been 18 minutes and I'm still sitting here scrolling. So that is one way that I've found to kind of control myself. But I'm curious from your standpoint, I'm sure you subscribe to a lot of different people on Instagram or get newsletters that you really enjoy. What are some newsletters that you really enjoy reading, or what are some accounts or brands or people that you really enjoy following on Could be Instagram, but could be LinkedIn or Twitter or any of these other social channels?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely, I've noticed in the last while, particularly on Instagram, I've upped my kind of following of comedy and light humor, because I think,
Yeah.
the way, we're consuming information at the moment, it is so overwhelming that actually, exactly to your point, just a little burst of something that is actually a bit funny or kind of brings a little bit of a smile to your face. I love the cartoonist Liana Fink. She does cartoons for just little illustrations, really simple ones for the New Yorker. Now, I say they're simple, but actually they are so powerful because they really capture the human experience perfectly. So I love looking at those kinds of things on Instagram. And newsletter wise, I mean, the Mindset Matters newsletter is just the ultimate, by Gemma Lee Roberts, our colleague on LinkedIn Learning. And she has just recently released started a podcast, a Mindset Matters podcast. So I love tuning into that. And actually, a bit like you were describing, Kim, sometimes I'll allow myself, like say a podcast episode, I might break it into chunks. So I'll allow myself, if I need to get up and, if the time has come that I absolutely need to break the flow and get up and go and do something, I'll allow myself 10 minutes of a podcast and then come back to it later, So Gemma's podcast is absolutely fantastic because, true to form with Gemma, she's so brilliant at getting deep into, the issues around mindset and things that we're experiencing. Like me, she's a psychologist, so she knows on her research expertise areas around resilience. So she knows, so she's a fountain of knowledge and all of those things. But she's also brilliant at making it actionable and making it practical. I think she was on here a couple of weeks ago, wasn't she? So maybe people have met Gemma not so long ago. But yeah, that's my go-to at the moment.
I feel like those are so great. I've been so excited about the podcast for her. It's like such a great extension of the brand and everything else that she's building. So it seems like a unnatural fit. So I can totally relate when you're like, oh, this is such a good resource. I'm curious, do you use any special like apps or software in your everyday life that kind of makes things easier for you or kind of puts things in check for you, or that you just kind of helps organize your life in a new way?
Do you know something I've been using a lot recently? Very basic, if you know me, I'm not the most advanced when it comes to my app knowledge. Partly because I need to spend less time on my phone, not more time on my phone. So I kind of just, but sometimes that gets to the point then when I'm kind of a little bit behind the times. But one thing that I love using actually at the moment for my work is the Voice Notes app. And what I do with that, and again, to the point of like trying to make sure to structure my day, that I'm getting outside and not sitting in front of a laptop all the time. So a lot of my work involves delivering keynotes or doing virtual workshops with teams and with organizations, or recording courses. So it means that I'm trying to familiarize myself a lot of the time with some content, right? So there are lots of different ways you can do that. This is a really classic example of job crafting, by the way. So job crafting is, trying to tailor the way that you work and the little tasks that you do to fit how best works for you. So instead of sitting in front of a laptop and reading and trying to, memorize the content, I've started recording what I want to say on my phone and on my voice notes app, and going out and listening to it as I walk, go for a walk. And I find it really helpful because firstly, it gets it on your ear and it starts to help you to memorize it, but it also helps you listen to it in a new way because, obviously you're listening to it then as though you're listening to a podcast or listening to it for the first time. And you kind of start to spot ways of, oh, actually I could say that in a slightly more concise way, or, I could do that a little bit better. You also notice, of course, then when you start to tune out and you go, right, I should probably shorten that part. So yeah, that's actually just something I've been relying on quite a lot recently, to break up my day. So it's just a different way. I mean, obviously I really don't like listening. Nobody likes listening to their own voice. So it's, you have to kind of overcome that part of it. But I find it's a brilliant way of changing up, how I work, because otherwise I'd be just stuck at my desk all day long.
Yeah, you'd be like, this is crazy. No, nobody wants that. Well, as you know, around these parts, we love ourselves a good homework assignment. We're big into homework. We're big into self-improvement. We like doing things that are going to make us better and smarter and more adapt to change. So I'm curious, if you were to give us a homework assignment to do sometime this rest of the week, maybe over the weekend, could be to read something, could be to download something, could be to subscribe to something, could be a task. What homework assignment would you give us for the week?
Well, so did you see that Elmo broke the internet recently? Did you hear this?
With Larry David, right?
Oh, I didn't hear the Larry David part of it, but
yes, it was in reaction to his Elmo.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Oh, I must look at that, because that's gonna. Whatever Larry David does, he's always gonna make me laugh. So for anyone who doesn't know, and I'd love you to get me up to speed on the Larry David part, but Elmo, yes, and I am talking about the Muppet Elmo, innocently asked on Twitter or X, "How are you? How are you doing?" And it absolutely broke the internet, with people responding, telling Elmo just exactly how they're doing, and with like huge detail around all how they're feeling. And it just said to me, and this is one of the things I'm working with a lot of teams with at the moment, particularly those who are going through change and instability, to encourage leaders to just take that time out. It doesn't have to be a big gesture. Time out to ask people how they're really doing. Just a few moments of a check-in, right? And I think the reason people wanted to respond to Elmo, or felt comfortable responding to Elmo, is that, Elmo is obviously a very lovable, playful character. And people probably just felt like, oh my God, I can only really speak to Elmo. There's nobody else. Everybody else is too serious. So I think if we can try and find ways to just bring a little bit more levity, lightheartedness into our working lives, and also to try and just ask people how they are. So that's my homework assignment. Be like Elmo. Find someone and ask them how they're really doing.
That is such a beautiful homework assignment. I love it. If people are on the edge of their seats saying, I love everything that Erin is sharing today, and I want more of her wisdom and tips and tactics, where is the best place that they should follow you and keep learning from you?
So I hang out mostly on LinkedIn, and I have courses on LinkedIn Learning, as you mentioned at the beginning. So if you like anything that I talked about today, hopefully you'll be able to find a little bit more on that. And you can imagine me listening to my voice notes in preparation for my recording. But I am also on Instagram. I have to say, I need to brush up my Instagram skills. I'm not doing very well on there. But anyway, I sometimes do post on Instagram as well. So, but mainly LinkedIn is where you'll find me.
I love it. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for being here and asking such great questions and giving such great points and tactics and things that work well for you. It was so wonderful to have your voice and your seat at the table with Erin and I. It was awesome to see you guys. We are off next Wednesday. I have a bit of a meeting that I have to go to, but we will be back the following Wednesday. You can always find more great chats that we have every single week over at Get Coffee with Cancer. You can kind of count on it like clockwork, but here is the URL right here, getcoffeewithkim.com. But thank you so much for joining, Erin. Thank you. And everybody have a beautiful week.